today we're going to make a granita, which is somewhere in the realm of a sorbet. So it is half still frozen, half churned dessert item, and it's actually relatively simple to make. So what you're going to put in here is half of pineapple juice, half of mango juice, and a little splash of lemon juice. And then before you start everything, you want to make some simple syrup. So that's going to be equal parts sugar and water with a little bit of glucose or clear corn syrup added, just for texture. Now, if we were to freeze this just as it is, it would be very crystally. It would be big shards of ice, and it wouldn't have a really good mouthfeel. So we're actually adding the simple syrup to create a better texture. Sugar is what makes ice cream scoopable. If you didn't have sugar, it wouldn't scoop into a nice ball. It would just sort of shatter and flake. So to make a granita is actually really, really simple. But this same formula could be used in an ice cream machine, and you could make sorbet. So I've got my two kinds of juice and my little bit of lemon juice just to make it a little bit more tart. And we're going to pour it into the container. And you want a nice shallow flat dish for this because it'll help it freeze a little bit faster. Okay, and then we're going to take our simple syrup and we're just going to pour that over top. It's easier if you've made your simple syrup earlier and chilled it so it's not super hot when you add it to this. It'll just make the freezing part go faster. And then what you want to do is just whisk it around. Make sure it's all nice and combined. One nice smooth mixture. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pop this in the freezer, and every somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes we're going to take it out and we're going to whisk it again. For the first probably 2 or 3 times it's not going to look like much is happening, but what you're doing is breaking up the crystals. So it's important to do it even if it looks like nothing's happening. So I'm going to throw this in the freezer and we'll be back in a second. So the first 20 minutes have gone by and not much is happening, but right in the corners you can see it's starting to chill just a little bit. So you just want to scrape into the corners, give everything a quick stir, and then pop it back into the freezer. Set your timer for another 15 minutes. So you can see after about 30 minutes, mine's starting to freeze up a little bit. Yours might take longer. Obviously, I have a really great freezer. So again, you just want to take your whisk and start whisking up. Make sure you're getting into all the edges. Give it a really good stir. And if you find that your whisk won't get into the corners, just take another tool and just sort of loosen up anything that might be stuck on the edges. You want to break up any large chunks that might be in there. As best you can. Clean up the edges if you made a mess. And back to the freezer. So you can see it's starting to get a little bit slushy. And so you just want to make sure you just keep stirring. At this point, maybe every 10 or 15 minutes, you want to make sure that you're in there, making sure everything's loosened up. Check it all off the corners. It's always going to freeze on the outside fastest. So work it into the middle. And back into the freezer. Okay, so we're just going to loosen everything. You can see that it's really starting to freeze now. You can kind of lift it off the edges. So really make sure that you work all those big bits into the middle where it's still slushy. Okay, Give it one another whisk. Just sort of break it up a bit. Probably one more segment in the freezer and we'll be good to go. I just want to make sure that I've got it a little bit leveled out so it's not really high in some spots and low in the others, so it freezes evenly. Okay, so back to the freezer. Okay, out of the freezer for the last time. You can see that it's gotten quite a bit firmer and it's kind of slushy, so I'm just going to take a spoon and just sort of scrape at it now. Just make sure it's all nice and fluffed. If it's a little bit soft still, run your whisk through it one more time. But you can see that it's all really, really, really nice and slushy. So now we can serve this in a glass, we can serve it on side of dessert, all kinds of things. But it's nice with sort of that crunchy, crystally texture. It's supposed to be a little bit different than sorbet. Just bust it up a little. So there we have a beautiful granita that you can make without an ice cream machine. So I'm going to hold it just on the side so you can see it a little bit better. But you can see sort of all the little different crystally textures. And it's light and refreshing. You can make it sweet, you can make it savory, but you do need to include the simple syrup. Otherwise, it really is crystally hard. So, granita, enjoy.